There are two remaining head coaching jobs available in the NFL, and both pack major ripple effects. We got all that and much more for you on today's episode of Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome into another episode of Locked On NFL. It is Tuesday, so you've got Luke Braun at Luke Braun NFL, myself, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola, your regular weekly Tuesday nerds in action. We are back here for another action-packed episode of Locked On NFL. We're going to get to our yike and our like, including one specific Raven that just kind of blew it on AFC Championship Sunday. We're going to take a look at power ranking all of the hires that have happened at head coaching positions across the league so far. And we're going to kick all of it off as well by taking a look at the predictions and ripple effects when it comes to the potential hires that remain with two open spots still available, the Washington Commanders and the Seattle Seahawks. We appreciate you very much, as always, being an everydayer here on the show and making us your first listen of the day every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On NFL brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Make every moment more, and right now, new customers are going to get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. So, Luke, we've got the Washington Commanders. We've got the Seattle Seahawks. There are a bunch of interviews left now with some of those exits that happened during championship weekend. Let's start with the Washington Commanders. Everyone seems to be convinced that this is all going in one direction. Detroit Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. What's your prediction for who lands as the head coach of the Washington Commanders?
I mean, I guess it has to be that it's Ben Johnson, right? It makes a lot of sense. What Ben Johnson did in Detroit too over the playoffs. You know, you got 3 games of a front row seat to all the cool run game stuff that he's put together. And as far as all the like scheme lord head coaches go, most of them are really known for passing concepts and really cool ways of getting play action and getting to this look and getting to these concepts. But Ben Johnson or the Lions is a run game team, which Ben Johnson gets a lot of credit for. I also want to shout out Hank Fraley, though. That is the coolest run game in the league for sure. No holds barred. So, hopefully the Commanders, for me, the Commanders have to be like a hard-nosed team. Like it just, you go back to the Hogs of the 80s, like it feels like that's what it has to be. If they ever try to be like a high flying, like dome style team that's like throwing for 500 a game and you know, running twice a day, it's wrong. It can't be that way. So I want them to embrace the run game with Ben Johnson. Let's get into it. Yes.
Yeah, and a really good running back over there too. I mean, a couple of good running backs, but in particular, Brian Robinson, the former Alabama running back. He's one of those guys that was awesome throughout his draft class, awesome throughout the draft process, and has been great when he's out on the field as well. So, I mean, you want to build a run game around somebody. There's definitely worse options. The thing that kind of interests me a lot about Ben Johnson ending up in Washington is this ripple effect. And I'm gonna highlight some ripple effects with Washington and with Seattle here. But when it comes to Washington, the ripple effect for me is then you got Ben Johnson coming in, who's your offensive head coach, going to be a play caller. You've got 12 open offensive coordinator positions-ish around the NFL right now. Does Eric Bienemy end up bouncing, right? Does he end up moving and going somewhere where he, again, is a play caller? Or do you just stick there and just give up the play calling role and stay in Washington?
Yeah, that's going to be something in all of these teams that have hired their head coach. It already is. You know, guys like Kellen Moore already taking interviews, taking jobs elsewhere and all that. So it's not that uncommon. It's pretty normal for the staffers, the coordinators, the position coaches, when a new head coach comes in to kind of the new head coach will pick and choose a few to keep, right? But it's really they're back in the hiring market, and you know, some of them just happen to get picked by a guy that works for the same team. So I wouldn't be shocked at all to see Eric Bienemy go back out there and maybe even, you know, well, maybe not go back to Kansas City, but
I I happen to know one team that he spent about 8 hours doing a head coaching interview a couple years ago that's in need of an offensive coordinator down in New Orleans, but that's neither here nor there.
Okay, I see.
You know, I just wanted to shoot my shot here on Locked In NFL. You know, no big deal. All right, so Washington feels very close that's going to be Ben Johnson. We'll see exactly where all that goes. I want to shout out Matt Derry on yesterday's episode of Locked In NFL saying that his sources are telling him that it is indeed Brian Johnson to Washington. So we'll see how all of that ends up shaking out. Maybe a little bit of news breakage here on Locked In NFL. Yeah. We'll see how it all works
Johnson out. To the Commanders. Lock it up.
Let's see. And then meanwhile, the Seattle Seahawks. So you've got now Ben Johnson, who's interviewing in like both of these jobs, Seattle, Washington, but now you've got, Mike MacDonald hitting the market. He's been a guy over there. I kind of have to, my crystal ball is kind of going towards Mike MacDonald. I was a little bit kind of convinced early on that it was going to be maybe the reunion of Dan Quinn. NFL teams love a reunion. We live for it. But
it seems like it's down to those two, right?
Yeah. And that's kind of what feels like it's supposed to cover. But I kind of wonder right now if Mike McDaniel's really the guy that's in the lead. So I kind of go towards him. What about you?
Mike MacDonald is, again, like, we just got such a front row seat to all the cool stuff that he did with that defense, and including getting like really cool highlight moments out of like Kyle Van Noy at his age and stuff.
And Kyle Hamilton, the young kid out of there.
Yeah, like, the development of Kyle Hamilton. Everybody's I mean, he's so much fun. It makes a lot of sense, and it's kind of similar. Like the character to me of the Seattle Seahawks growing up was the team of Sean Alexander, and then they became the team of Pete Carroll, and establish it all a little bit. I saw somebody around that sphere say, like, if they're not pissing off the nerds a little bit, it's not Seattle. And I love it.
Seattle.
Don't Mike MacDonald. I thought the Dan Quinn thing was
more Jordan Brooks type picks with Mike MacDonald in the building. Like, I'm all about it.
Exactly. I think like Mike MacDonald has, I mean, he's such a hot name right now that it makes sense regardless of like the offensive defensive thing. But like Dan Quinn would have been a little bit too samey for me. Like, if you're gonna do that, just keep Pete, man. Like, what are we trying to do here? And I think the way that the Cowboys went out kind of puts a little bit of a shine. His head loses its luster, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm always anti backsliding, whether in the NFL or in life. I'm always anti backsliding. So
fair
I'm
enough.
Okay with moving that out of the way.
and I know it shouldn't matter too much, right? Like it's one game out of an entire resume, and dude's been coaching for years and for decades, right? It shouldn't matter too much, but like it kind of does, and it's one of those like things that we as humans are like just too cognizant of, and it's hard to fight that bias. So I have a feeling that kind of matters as well, but also I don't know, it just doesn't feel like with Mike MacDonald, you're going with a defensive guy again, but it's different enough. Like you're not just running it back. I don't want Seahawks fans to think that.
Yeah. I'm with you 100%. And for me, the ripple effect in this one is how much of an impact does it have on Lamar Jackson and the window for the Baltimore Ravens if they lose Mike MacDonald? How big was having that offense take the steps forward that it did with Greg Monken at offensive coordinator, but then also the steps forward that they took with Mike MacDonald at defensive coordinator and building out that defensive development. Some of the guys that we mentioned earlier, Justin Madubuike was a big one as well. Like these guys that have been very impactful. I'm just curious, losing Mike MacDonald, how that impacts the window, but we'll see. So we've got Mike MacDonald heading over to Seattle. We got Ben Johnson going over to Washington. We'll see. Those are our predictions, the crystal ball of the Tuesday episode of Locked On NFL here. Coming up next, we're going to take a look at the 6 hires that have already happened, and Luke and I are going to give our power rankings for those hires. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's the holiday season, everybody. It's getting to be about time for gambling Christmas. That is the Super Bowl, and FanDuel has you covered. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started on wagering everywhere all over the world of sports, but of course, especially the Super Bowl, and they got something pretty juicy coming down the pipe for you. You can get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. That can be anything. That can be something that's minus 1,000. That can be all kinds of wacky props that you can be on the right side of. So go take advantage of that. Get your $200 in bonus bets just for going to FanDuel.com/locked-on to sign up. They've also got all kinds of really fun specials, like if either QB were to catch their own pass, which, we saw this weekend, that'll happen. That's plus 5,000. Pretty fun odds there. All kinds of wacky stuff like that. I love the Super Bowl. I love the crazy stuff that happens with the betting boards in the Super Bowl. So go to FanDuel.com/locked-on, sign up, get that $5 bet in, and go check out the fun stuff. Once again, that is FanDuel.com/locked-on. Make every moment more.
All right, everybody, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On NFL, ranking the 6 hires that have happened at head coach already across the league. Luke and I have already built out our rankings. We haven't shared them with each other, so this is going to be a little bit of shock and awe for the both of us as we kind of go through, how it goes. We'll start at 1 and we'll work our way down to 6 here. And of course, we appreciate you very much for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget to go and check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 national sports YouTube stream, 24/7, the first of its kind when it comes to national sports. Go and check it out today at Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. All right, Luke, you ready to do number 1 of the 6 hires that have happened so far at head coach?
Kick us off.
All right, I'm going chalk. Jim Harbaugh to the Los Angeles Chargers. Name a better duo when it comes to head coach and social media presence than Jim Harbaugh and the Los Angeles Chargers social media team. You can't. I won't even wait. The answer is you can't name one better than that.
I do like the Jim. He's in the top half for me. I do like the Jim Harbaugh because he is a larger than life figure, and it kind of feels like LA needs that. LA needs somebody that becomes their identity, because I don't think that Justin Herbert is their identity. Maybe he should be, but it's not really. Their identity is like 2-minute shenanigans. They need somebody to like instill they need like that kind of figure. I think it's a perfect fit for him for sure.
Dare I say they need a feature length type of presence?
Well, let's not talk about filming.
All right.
I'm not going chalk. My favorite is I don't think you're gonna like this, Ross, but my favorite is the Atlanta Falcons and Raheem Morris. I pounded the table for Raheem Morris when he interviewed for the Vikings head coach job a couple of years ago. And the reason was that I think he got way too much flack for his first head coaching stint. That roster was messed up, made a couple of bad decisions. He was a lot younger. It was a decade ago. Since then, he flipped sides of the ball, learned other things. He's part of the original brain trust of Shanahan and McVay and Mike McDaniel and all those guys. They would just sit around and smoke cigars and solve football. They would just talk. And a lot of the concepts that we see everywhere in the NFL today were born in some way of those conversations. This dude's in the brain trust. He's got offensive and defensive experience. And I think that he's ready to take the next step. Yeah, I really agree. I am shocked and appalled that you would choose the Atlanta Falcons head coach at number 1 or even that high on your list. Or say anything nice about the Falcons at all.
Or anything nice about the Atlanta Falcons. We're not supposed to do that here. You'll never hear me do that. And with that said, number 2 for me is Raheem Morris, the Atlanta Falcons head coach. No, he was clearly a great hire. Fantastic hire for that team. And that stinks for Saints fans. That stinks for the NFC South. But you know what? That's how good football's made. It's supposed to be challenging. It's not supposed to be easy. The division's not supposed to be horrific. So no, I've actually got Raheem as my number 2.
Nice. My number 2 is still not Jim Harbaugh. It's Jerod Mayo. It's hard to argue with what New England has done because Jerod Mayo has been in the wings for a while. This is not. I know they made that hire fast. It's not a rush decision. It's a decision they made years ago, and he's just been getting ready to do it and learning and thinking in that perspective. I mean, you get told you're going to get that job every day, every game on the sideline. You're going to be thinking and observing just a little bit more of what Bill Belichick's doing. They are going to try to recapture that Belichick magic, and Belichick disciples in the league have not been great, right? You have Matt Patricia and Joe Judge and all those guys, because I don't think they truly got it. Like what made the Patriot way. I got to think Jerod Mayo, who played for it, who, it's much closer to a Vrabel situation, right? Who did well for a long time in Tennessee. how to build that culture where there is discipline instilled, but your players don't just like hate you.
Yep.
Which is that line that Belichick always walked. I don't know. It feels like for New England, there was that I can't think of what else they were supposed to do. This is absolutely the answer. That's why it's second for me. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually have Jerod Mayo at number 3 as well. I don't have a ton to add to what you said. I mean, the value is clearly there. The thing that I'll highlight is that, like, it clearly means a lot that when you bring in somebody to be your inside linebacker coach, but then put in their contract that they will be the successor to Bill Belichick, that clearly means something. It was really cool to see all of that play out. I've got Jerod Mayo at number 3.
Jim Harbaugh is my number 3 for a lot of the reasons that you said.
So we got the same top 3, just in a different order.
Yeah, we got the same top 3 in a different order. Not too bad. It just, for me, yeah, LA needs a culture. Like they need a culture. And that roster is going to undergo a lot of turnover in the next couple of years. And that means that Jim Harbaugh gets to instill culture as all those guys filter in. And hopefully if LA and Spanos and all those guys are patient enough, which I think they kind of have to be with Jim Harbaugh, then it can build something that, hey, look, we know from the college ranks, when you've got a blue-blooded powerhouse in the same conference as you or same division as you, maybe he's the guy that can upend it. And I think that's kind of the logic here.
Yeah.
What do you got fourth?
And I love the way that the AFC West is shaking out for next year too, from a coach perspective. Number 4 for me, Brian Callahan, Tennessee Titans. Tennessee Titans wanted to go into the future, and this is the way that they've done it. They wanted to update their system. They wanted to bring their team into modernity. And so they went and they got a guy in Brian Callahan that can help them do that. Studied under Zach Taylor, of course, as the offensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals. I'll be curious to see just how updating they'll be, which is why it's in the bottom half for me, because I need to see it pan out. But I love the hire, and I like the vision and foresight that Tennessee has in making that choice.
Quickly, 4 for me is Antonio Pierce. Again, kind of for a similar reason as New England, where like you kind of had to, but unlike New England, very unique situation. This is just an interim coach that kind of earned the job, which I do think can get in the way sometimes, and kind of make you make your decision without considering enough other options. But again, it's like, I can't go tell a Raiders fan what else they should have done. So for me, it's 4th, but I'm less excited about it.
Yeah. I hear you on that. I've got Antonio Pierce at 5, and I'll actually, and that means that Dave Canales with the Carolina Panthers is at number 6, because I understand what it is the Carolina Panthers are trying to do. They want the development that they saw in Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield to happen with Bryce Young. Sure. But if they're not going to be able to give Bryce Young a Mike Evans and a Chris Godwin, or give Bryce Young a DK Metcalf and a Tyler Lockett, then I don't think that we see the impact right away in 1 year. They gave him a 6-year contract, so they're saying that they're going to be patient, but how patient is David Tepper really? I think the answer we already know. He's not very patient. So I've got that one last because I just don't know if he's going to get the time that he actually needs.
So I have Brian Callahan and then Dave Canales. And for me, both these guys are just like really strong, like rebukes of what the team used to be, right? Both Tennessee good and Carolina. Like Tennessee was the Mike Vrabel team in their old school, and we're smash mouth Derrick Henry kind of team, and we're deciding that doesn't work, and we're going the complete opposite way, which I think is most head coaching hires. If you look at a head coaching hire and look at the guy they fired, you're gonna find opposites along. Like look at LA, it's like meek little scheme lord. Now we're replacing him with Jim Harbaugh. Right. It's the way the NFL goes, but I think it's a little bit automatic. And what I'm always concerned with for both of these guys is culture. How do these guys develop culture? We don't know. It could be great. It could be not great. Right? It was great culture with McVay, right? But we don't really know, which is why they're kind of lower on the list for me. But Titans fans, Panthers fans don't take this to mean us saying that like we don't think it'll work. It's just that there are less things for me that I get excited about, but it's all very, very much a huge unknown. And the reason that Canales is last for me is because that situation sucks. And I think that's kind of why they're hiring somebody that didn't, they're not hiring the guy that interviewed everywhere, like Ejiro Evero, right? They're hiring who I don't even know if he's going to stay in Carolina, actually. But like that was not an attractive opening with the state of that roster and ownership and all that stuff. Sometimes it feels like they got who they could, not who they wanted.
Yep. Yep. Great call. Great point. All right. So that's our 6 rankings there in terms of what we're looking at for these head coaches. Coming up next, we're going to get to our yike and our like to wrap up the show, including how really one specific Raven for the Ravens just kind of entirely blew it this weekend. We got that coming up for you as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of the Locked On NFL Podcast is brought to you by eBay Motors. Look, your car is basically an extension of your personality, right? And whether you're trying to express yourself or just keep that thing running, eBay Motors is there for you. They have over 122 million parts for your car. You'll find exactly what you're looking for, whether it's something cosmetic like an LED or something cool like that, or you need an actual part under the hood. They will not only get you hooked up with something at a great price, but it'll definitely fit your car. That is the eBay guaranteed fit. It will fit your car every time or your money back. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers.
All right, everybody, wrapping up this episode of Locked On NFL as we do every Tuesday. Luke and I with our yike and our like of the week. Luke, I'm going to kick us off with some negativity here, but don't forget, we are your team every day. So come back tomorrow, James and Chris answering the biggest questions from around the National Football League. I'm going to start us off with my yike. So my yike, isn't necessarily that the Baltimore Ravens blew it, but I think that there is something to be said when one player loses their composure and then the ripple effect that creates to lead to a team losing its composure. And that's very much what I saw from Zay Flowers when it came to the Baltimore Ravens. You get this big catch down the field and an opportunity to be able to get your team into striking distance where you can, get within 3, right? It was 17-7 at the time. You get this big broken play. He's wide open down the field. L'Jarius Sneed comes up. You get the catch. L'Jarius Sneed goes. He makes the tackle. As Zay Flowers gets up, and remember, he's a young player, rookie wide receiver, Boston College, smaller guy, makes this big play in the biggest game of his life, but has to remember he's playing for the opportunity to play in the biggest game of his life. He's not quite there yet. And he pushes L'Jarius Sneed over, throws the ball down, stands over him, and gets a 15-yard flag for taunting. So that ends up pushing them back, kills the momentum of that moment. Then you get the dump off to him. He creates, gets to the end zone as he's diving into the end zone and extending the football, which I'll tell you, like the New Orleans Saints teach their players to never do this. Never extend for the goal line. I don't know if that's common amongst teams or if it's uncommon amongst teams, but Zay Flowers maybe didn't get the message. Goes out there, and who else but L'Jarius Sneed comes in, punches the ball out, and then it turns into a fumble, recovered in the end zone, touchback for the Kansas City Chiefs, an opportunity blown there for the Ravens to get into or within 3. Now, I'm not holding that play in particular against Zay Flowers. That was a fantastic play by L'Jarius Sneed. He's the one that deserves the credit for it. But then for Zay Flowers to lose his cool, go to the sideline, punch the bench, and cut his hand open in a game where you kind of need your hands, buddy. God. Like, goodness gracious. Like, it was just an entire lack of composure. And I get that he's young and everything like that. And I really hope that this is going to be a great, like, learning experience for him.
Yeah, you learn from that.
You gotta, it kind of rings in my mind, like the moniker of like, act like you've been there when it comes to the big catch. And then from there, things just kind of spiraled out of control. Then we saw, Lamar Jackson throwing in the triple coverage. We saw, roughing the passer penalty after roughing the passer penalty after roughing the passer penalty and stuff like that. Like, you just watch the composure just fall out from underneath the Ravens, and that kind of stunk because this felt like this was the time for them. It
really felt like it should have been their year. Both my yike and my like have to do with the Detroit Lions. My yike goes to Lions fans, not because I'm angry at them for the signs they held up or whatever. No, none of that. But it's because Lions fans have to go now through a new kind of pain, which you didn't think was possible for Lions fans. You thought you've seen it all. Oh, you haven't seen it all. And here's the thing for Lions fans. It doesn't get better. No, everybody, we'll be back here. I don't know, man. Dan Campbell doesn't even know. He's like, that could have been our shot. He told his team that, which I love his candor. There are so many little ways that this game is going to harm you in the future that you don't get to see coming. You don't get to know about it. This is something Ross and I were talking about before the show, because we both watched our teams, lose heartbreaking NFC championships. When you go back into Levi Stadium, if the Lions wear the same jerseys, it's gonna be so haunted.
Right,
like, it's gonna feel so weird. Like when the Vikings play at the Link in Philadelphia, and it's the same uniform matchup as that 2017 NFC championship. It's like, it's just something about it feels off. Like you're in a simulation, and it's going to hurt you. And you're not even going to really realize why it's hurting you until you think about it for a little bit. Anytime the 49ers play the Lions, you're going to get highlights from this game. You're going to get that time that they should have gone for it. You're going to go right back into it. You're going to see that insane catch from Brandon Ayuk off of Kindle Vildor's face. You're never going to escape it, and it's not going to get better. So
nope.
Good luck with that.
It's going to show up when you least expect it. People are going to draw these lines and go, oh, that reminds it. The last time these two people were in the same place, this happened. And you're like, why?
Former Lion and a former 49er are going to play in a game between like the Texans and the Jaguars that you're watching on Red Zone, and you're going to see that. And you're going to be like, what? There's nowhere safe. It's going to hurt you in a way you haven't been hurt before. And many young Lions fans have had the trajectory of their lives changed forever, which is what makes football good and bad. My like also goes to the Lions, but just to Dan Campbell. For one, like I said, I love his candor. I love how honest he is, and I love how genuine he is. A lot of guys that, they tell it like it is, or just grouches with an excuse. He really does. Like, I'm so endeared to Dan. I've loved watching Dan Campbell as much as I'm forced and obligated by law to root against him.
Yes.
Here's what I think, and here's what I'll give Lions fans. I would say for as long as Dan Campbell is the head coach of the Lions, I'd be surprised if he ever fell under 7 wins. He just seems like the kind of guy with that juice to get a team to play hard. And now that they at least have enough young talent where they'll always have, you're not going to have a 2021 situation again where everyone just sucks. You'll have, I think that you're going to have that floor. And I love in particular the fourth down decisions, whatever, right? He took a risk. It didn't work out. I think you have to be able to take that in stride as like a sports fan. That's part of it. And he was asked about it after the game, and he just said, I don't regret it at all. That's the thing we were going to do. You win some, you lose some. You don't get to be a guy that goes for it on fourth down all the time without going for it on fourth down and not making it in a time when it's like not conventional to do so. Like, that is the cost. Hello. Yes, this is what we do. And it's the first time ever I can remember a coach getting grilled after a game for a decision like that, and everyone being like, "Oh, that was a pretty good answer." Like, that actually that makes a good point.
Yeah, I get it.
And everyone's like, there's never the right thing to say in the presser after that decision. We either say, "Oh, we wish we had that one back," and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, I bet you do," or you'll say, "Oh, we felt good about our whatever," and everybody's gonna say, "Well, obviously you were wrong, idiot." But he's like, "Yeah, no regrets. You lose sometimes. Deal with it." And it's true. Deal with it.
Yep. It's just what it is. Yeah, no, I did enjoy that. And yeah, you live by the sword, you die by the sword, right? Like, if you're going to be that team, you got to be that team.
You don't get to only go for it the times when you're going to make it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. My like is quick to wrap us up here, but I'm in Mobile, Alabama, getting ready for the Senior Bowl. And this is one of my favorite weeks of the NFL calendar every year, getting to see these kids out here, these college players coming in and starting to realize the dream, coming into what is without a doubt the best collegiate all-star game that there is to be offered. It's a fantastic group this year. I'm calling it what it is.
Galco will find you.
Come find me. I'm in Mobile. It won't be hard. It's where literally everyone is. So, So I love it, man, and it's awesome, and it's a great week. You get to see a bunch of friends, a bunch of people you only get to see like once a year and stuff like that too. So it's really cool. But I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to bring all the updates and everything all throughout. So and they're doing some fantastic coverage, by the way. Locked On NFL Draft, Damian Parsons, Keith Sanchez, keep you up to date with everything going on around the Senior Bowl, day in and day out. Previews, recaps, everything from every practice day. So make sure you're checking out Locked On NFL to get updated on that here as part of the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, Luke, that's my like. That's our yikes and our likes. And a fun day here on Locked On NFL. Make sure you come back tomorrow for Tony and James' biggest questions every single day or every single Wednesday. Get you all covered here across the rest of our Locked On NFL lineup as well here all throughout the rest of the week leading into Super Bowl Sunday next week. So we'll have a whole bunch coming up to get you ready for all of that. So we appreciate you very much for making us a part of your day and making us your first listen, being an everydayer here on the show and here across the network. And we appreciate you very much for joining us for another episode of Locked On NFL, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.